Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. We have news to cover today, and the news are good. Ukraine is counterattacking Russians and succeeding with this, which underlined one very important thing that I always wanted to deliver to you, which is that Russian army did not become stronger over the last half a year to a year time. It's just because Ukraine was deprived of resources, the Ukrainian army became weaker. Now, as Ukrainian army is getting some resources, we instantly see a pushback against Russians, which underlines one very important point. If we give Ukraine the resources, they will win. They will crush Russians and push them back to where they came from. So what are we observing right now is just initial slow counter pushes by Ukrainians. They were able to counterattack and retake certain parts of Russian captured positions. A lot of Ukrainians are referring to this as a counter push success because Russians were not entrenched yet. So it's despite the fact that Ukraine doesn't have a lot of resources, they're still able to execute offensive action. So the notable areas that were mentioned was that Ukrainians attacked here near Hlyboke, and they were able to push back Russians from the occupied area. And then the second part that is also being mentioned is that Ukrainians have been fighting in defense for Vovchansk. Russians were not fully able to capture this northern part of Vovchansk, despite the claims, despite even me saying that most probably Russians will be capturing the north part of Vovchansk. But now Ukrainians are saying we were able to clear a couple of streets right in this area, and we were able to push Russians a little bit back. Now, nothing is over. Russians are still sending reinforcements, so we should not get super excited once again. But the point still stands. The point is that whatever Russians trying to achieve, whatever Russians trying to break in the Ukrainian defenses, it all failed. And whatever resources Russia will be sending to this direction is just going to be more meat for the slaughter. So very good news. It's great to see the movements, and it's great to see that Ukrainians are able to execute when they are actually supplied with resources. But while the resources are dedicated to fight Russians around the northern offensive, not still enough resources are making to other parts of the front line, so Russians are continuing making their improvement to positions. Most notably, what was reported is that Russians were able to finish capturing Netailova, and with Netailova, so let's be very clear what Russians have been able to capture here, because this is Netailova. The last piece over here is what Russians were capturing here. And about a month ago, I was telling you that Ukrainians in this triangle over here are in a very weak position, that most likely Russians are just going to come in, sweep through, and clear this triangle. Now, if you see a month ago, this is where Netailova was. So again, this is what's been taken in a month. This is basically couple of hundred of meters. So, and that's kind of the same thing as well here. Like there is also some improvements for the Russian positions around Ocheretine. But the most important thing is what? Is that Russians are having right now still some resource advantage, but the tempo of slowing them down, the fact that Ukrainians are counterattacking, the fact that we're seeing Ukrainians being more aggressive, being more active in their defense, is already becoming a problem for Russians. Because while you are in a complete defense, then usually you don't really try to counterattack, so you just try to slow down the attacking forces. This is nice, but this allows a lot of freedom of movement for the Russians to essentially dictate at which directions and how they will attack. They're able to move around their resources in the back. They're able to concentrate forces on the areas that they want to decide. When Ukraine have more resources, and what we will see slow transition towards during the summer is a more active defense, something where Ukraine will be more actively trying to bite Russians where they're not expecting this. And it's already happening, because right now reports with some videos are that Ukrainians were actually able to liberate the village of Vesele. Now, village of Vesele is like 10 or 15 people, I think, live there. Like it's a very small, it's not an actual number. But it's a village that was controlled by Russia, and now Ukrainians have taken the village, if we can judge by satellite images. So Ukrainians are counterattacking Russians where Russians are not expecting. And obviously, Russians will need to respond to this. So at some point, they will need to send some kind of resources here. And that's going to start happening across other places in the front line, where Russians might still be pushing one place, but Ukrainians will be counterattacking other place. So Russians will have to start moving around their resources, and they will not have enough resources for their main pushes, therefore kind of equalizing the movement on the front line. So a front line will become more stable. As I say, everything points that within 3 weeks, Russians will not be able to already advance, or even if the advancements will be, it's maximum going to be, I don't know, 100 meters in one direction or something like this. So the Ukrainians are getting the resources, Ukrainians are getting strengthened, and they're able to counterattack, take some kind of settlements, even small ones, and very, very non-noticeable, but they're able to counterattack. We're going to go over some full map details later on in the week, because right now we have a lot of good news to talk about. The first news is that Ukraine is, I am pretty sure that Ukraine will be allowed to strike Russia. Right now, the details are purely speculative of the agreement that will allow Ukraine to strike within Russia. So I will not be voicing, I put them in my community section. But until I get a confirmation on some of those, I don't want to speculate them on the video. But the good news is that the President Emmanuel Macron found a really good way on how to communicate. In their joint press conference with Chancellor Scholz, what he did, he printed out a map. And on that map, he actually just showed what is happening on the border, why it is crucial for Ukraine to attack Russians beyond the border, and just explained in plain language why is it crucial for Ukraine to strike Russia. And this worked extremely well. The response, the general discussion that was happening before just now picked up a lot of steam. There is now speculated that Macron was able to convince Scholz somewhat, but again, as soon as the details will happen, we will be able to know more. And it is expected that Joe Biden will also approve this agreement, mostly because, I mean, like almost whole of NATO right now is standing for it. So this is great. Second great news is that the first batch of the Czech initiative of procuring millions of artillery shells is now in delivery phase. In the coming days, Ukraine will start receiving tens and thousands of shells for their efforts, which means that whatever we were seeing on the front line, all these movements that we see Ukrainians do at the north, movements that Ukrainians did here in the east locally and so on, all of that will be reinforced, and we will see more and more movement towards it, which is great news, and we're looking forward to this. Again, really bad news for Russians, and it's very nice to see. Here again, Tendar is describing that Sweden is supplying very special new support package for Ukraine. In that support package, the biggest thing is obviously the AWACS analog plane, which is early warning flying radar plane, which is really massive. It's a massive increase for a lot of things, because what this plane does, basically, it moves all of the information, the radar information that Ukraine will have with the Patriot missile systems, the Iris-T anti-air systems, the other integrated systems within NATO frequencies and so on, plus the coming F-16s that will come in. This early warning plane will basically be able to paint a picture of everything that is happening in the air. To put it in very simple terms, this is a force multiplier. Whatever Ukraine defenses have with their radars on the ground from the anti-air systems, whatever benefits they had from F-16's planes with their improved radar compared to what Ukrainians are flying right now, the early warning means massive improvements. It means that any missiles that was shoot before will be more efficient. The targets will come up a lot earlier. Ukraine will be able to track more assets in the air, and it's just all the way big force multiplier. It was unexpected, and it's probably one of the most impressive support. I don't know, like, it's not a gift, but it's literally, it can make and break. So remember, Russia has right now about 3 of these. So Ukraine is finally getting a capability that it didn't have before. Before, it was only whatever the radars from the NATO members were willing to share with Ukraine. Now Ukraine will be able to do it on their own. Beyond that, Sweden will also provide all of their PBV 302 vehicles. Now, these are light infantry. They're not infantry fighting vehicles. They're armored personnel carriers. But everything works for Ukraine. Remember, even M113s were really greatly accepted. Now, Tendar mentions here there is 650 in them total. But 650 is a total number build that is known. It's not clear if Sweden has all of them, if they have been not decommissioned maybe or not. So this is just a kind of like the default number. But if it is 600 of the additional armored personnel carriers, that again is a massive boost on the ground, which is a big benefits towards also with Bradleys, which are amazing, and so on. Beyond that, there is also that AMRAAM missiles that again will be great with the early warning plane, financial support, and so on. So to kind of put this perspective in a package, I mean, description how it is here by Tendar is great, but I like this one a little bit more. I think this expresses the feelings that we are having just a little bit better. And talking about planes, talking about F-16s, Belgium signed a security guarantee with Ukraine. Now, this has been long in the making. Belgium has been one of the countries that's been a little bit reluctant on supplying Ukraine with planes. It is expected because Belgium doesn't feel really that they have, they want to escalate it with Russia. There is a lot of Russian money in Belgium. And now they said that they will provide 30 F-16 planes within 4 years, so up to 2028. So it's not going to come fast, but again, even not fast, this is still a big benefits. The point is, some people saw the security agreement, and Belgium said that Ukraine will be able to use the F-16 planes on the territory of Ukraine, and people like instantly went, oh my god, it's again, Ukraine is not allowed to attack Russia. Well, firstly, this agreement came before this major negotiation right now about what Ukraine can and cannot attack, so Belgium can be persuaded later on. And secondly, what are we talking about specifically here? Because F-16 is a platform, right? So if Belgium F-16 is flying with the Swedish missiles, is it the Swedish missiles that are firing into Russia, or is it the Belgium F-16? So it's a bit of a gray area, so I would not dismiss, and I think this is something that can be changed later on. So don't be discouraged by this. And the first planes that are going to come in from Denmark, and it's going to be just a couple of F-16 planes, and we're going to see more of them coming in the next coming years. So in total, it's a pretty solid numbers. The only thing that unfortunately I'm still missing here, I would like to see here not just flag of Belgium, not just the flag of Netherlands, not just the flag of Denmark, not just the flag of Norway, which is a huge thanks to all of these countries, but the flag of the USA. And Russians know what is coming. Russians finally decided, is like, yeah, we've been losing a lot of aviation. So they finally started building defenses against their planes. So right now it's going to be a little bit harder to tell whether there were or were not planes struck by Ukrainian drones and missiles on their airfields. But I'm pretty sure Ukrainian intelligence will find a way around and it will be able to strike it anyway. Then the important question. Now, this is the topic that I was evading a little bit, like a little bit. I knew a thing or two because a couple of people reached out to me after some of my sessions where I was a little bit discouraged that there was not a mobilization effort in Ukraine, that there was not a major training, and they provided me certain details. Finally, I got certain things. Certain things appeared on the Russian Telegram channels and Russian media, so I can talk about this. So while the journalists and media and everyone else talks about that Ukrainian mobilization and Ukraine is struggling with the manpower, the truth is Ukraine is already preparing a huge reinforcements. So this month ago, I talked about in this video over here that's called Expanding Army. Ukraine builds up for a fight, which was on the 29th of April, which was right a month ago, by the way. And I talked about that Ukraine needs the second army for their potential offensive. Right now, Ukraine is training at least 10 new brigades. And right now, there are actually problems because with the new law, Ukrainians are now getting huge mobilization boost. There is a lot of people, like right now for the Reserve Plus system, over 1.2 million people have renewed their data to be within the military reserve of Ukraine. So all of the bullshit arguments that there are no Ukrainians that want to fight go into the toilet for everyone. And right now, the training centers within Ukraine are full. It is absolutely packed. The 10 brigades that Ukraine is training, and again, this news made it to Russian sources, so I can finally talk about this. So the 10 brigades that Ukraine is training are not being trained as a separate brigades. During the Ukrainian counteroffensive, Ukrainians and since the 2014, Ukrainians have adopted a model of the army that is heavily based on the brigade level. This stemmed from the history of how Ukrainian army was fought. It stemmed from the fact that there was initially certain groups that were volunteered groups in certain regions and they gathered together to resist the Russian occupation. This came out for these groups to form battalions, then they get more and more resources and essentially became brigades, and a lot of the brigades grew organically this way. And Ukrainian military has been heavily dependent on the brigade level cooperation. So there would be like a brigade level, some brigades would be combined together in some kind of communication network, and then they would communicate to the general staff. But there was no bigger army forces. So the 10 new brigades that are being trained are not being trained to be independently operational on a brigade level like Ukrainian army is operating now. They are being trained and right from the get-go prepared on the Army Corps level. So an Army Corps is like a bigger, like it's basically like 10 brigades. It's up to 40,000 people that are gonna be part of a one single well-trained unit with a proper established chain of command, rather than having brigade level and then just some communication with the head staff. This will significantly improve with the current mass-scale warfare, where it's not just the adaptation that Ukraine needs, which allows this brigade-level approach, but also doing major maneuvers, such as having this like a full-blown army corps that can be operated as a single unit to attack, for example, in a certain direction, to execute on a large-scale offensive maneuver. It's great to know that Ukrainians are doing it. The training centers are in full-blown. Mobilization effort is now full throttle in there. There is mobilization. There is people that are willing to do it. So all of these articles are way behind the time. And finally, I want to share something with you because this is my thanks to everyone in this community. So some time ago, we tried our initial work with Ukraine ADOPS, whether or not you guys will support it or not. And we did a small fundraiser for a couple of electronic warfare systems. And the fighters are coming back and they're saying thanks to you. So I'm just gonna play this video right here.
Бійці 25-ї Січеславської бригади, дякуємо за допомогу і за реп Ukraine Matters. Героям слава! Бійці 25-ї Січеславської.
So huge thanks to everyone from the 25th Separate Airborne Brigade for providing them, I believe it is 4 electronic warfare systems to fight against drones. We already are in contact with Ukraine ADOPS to do more fundraisers. There's also other fundraisers that we're doing. This community has been exceptional, and I could not be more proud that I know you all guys. Thank you everyone that keeps watching this channel. Thank you everyone that keeps supporting Ukraine. Trust in Ukrainian armed forces. I love you all. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you next time.
I say